Are you good?
I'm good.
We do have this first slide that talks about the instructional design in this section. We want to touch on that and then cover the slide sorter.
Sure. So Sarah, do you have that slide that you were going to show? Yes, and you did.
I sure do. Yep.
Super.
Yep.
This is designed to help you. This is like reflective listening. Confrontation can be a challenging slide to facilitate. So understand that you're there for them, to bring them through an experience that they're going to choose based on their life experiences. It's not, we often think, as you guys have used the word preaching, when you look at the teaching arc, you won't see preaching anywhere, but you will see modeling and you will see facilitating. So in this module, these 7 kind of give you a clue of what you're going to be doing. First, facilitating our learners to think about and reinforce the practice of reflective listening. We go back and we say, how did that go last night when your homework was to listen to someone? Someone had a problem, you step back and listen. How'd that go? So really, because listening is central to confrontation, it's so important that we, again, the design of the course, that we start with the idea of how did that go for you? Did you try it out? How hard was it? Because some people will say it was so hard. Many people will say it is very, very hard. Again, building confidence, validating success. Then we start building the disruptive dilemma. And here it's quick. It hits the arc really, really fast, because we start out by talking about why don't we engage in conflict? How does conflict make you feel? We get to the feeling place really quickly, because that's what it is for all of us. We feel discomfort, whether it's anger or whether it's just a sense of someone fighting with me. We go through that, and we go through the power of the past so that people can remember what it feels like when someone used power on them. Then we move really quickly to turning that into no more. We're not going to do this to other people anymore. Don't miss that flip from what happened to me doing this every day to other people. So it's very intentional about moving to understand that this is a destructive approach. We're not going to do this anymore. We're going to stop the cycle of violence and then provide the alternative approach by showing what happens when I use the bat and what happens when I use the bent knee. Then we move to how do I do it? So the first part of the module is all about getting to a place of saying, I've got to give up the bat. And then the rest of the course is what else can I do? How do I do that? And then we practice it, right? So that is the course from the instructional design and your task point of view. So think about the things we want our learners to experience that is really intentionally designed. Now, let me, in my show my screen moment, give you the quick overview. Am I showing my screen?
Yes, you are.
Good, terrific. So we just kind of walk through this. And as you start this day, we're going to listen with empathy as people are sharing their experience. Then we move to effective confrontation. We go through what are the biggest number of learning objectives in the course. And then when we hit that mall map slide, we say really clearly, we are taking a grappling hook back to day 1, and we're pulling everything we've learned forward, because you're going to need everything in effective confrontation. We're going to learn how to do it, and we're going to role play it. Understand listening is critical. If you don't care, don't listen. And until you've proven you can listen, you haven't earned the right to confront. So let's start by talking about confrontation. And then again, we do this conversation, interactive experience with the learners to look at what are my experiences with confrontation? What feelings did I have around that? What are the words that come to mind? We write this up. We have a lot of great conversation. The class is in a kind of an interesting place. It's not wildly positive, but we're not in a unhappy place yet. But we recognize that everybody has the same experience. Even our high Ds, who are in many ways are more comfortable with confrontation than people like myself, who have more of the S tendency. We then move from that list of words, fight, war, argue, to let's take a minute and have an experience. Guys, I think we've mentioned before, this is a very personal thing. The original exercise was pulled from what was a therapy approach, a group therapy approach. And we have carved it down to one experience that we want people to remember that has happened in their adulthood, preferably outside the home. The language is very intentional. You have a script and you have a document that walks you through. One important thing here is this is serious. This is not a place for a joke. This is not a place for a lighthearted anecdote. You are to let everyone remember how they felt and share your own one simple experience about someone using power to force their will on you. What did you feel? What did you respond? Your partner will come up. You will let everyone know they are free to leave the room. They are free to pass. Everything is acceptable except sharing details of the experience that they're remembering. Only 2 words. What did you feel? Anger. What did you do? Thought. That's all we're asking for. That's all we're going to share. So as you prepare to teach, everyone, spend time with this material the night before, obviously in your preparation. But this is a place that's really critically important and can, for some people, bring back very painful memories. 99% of your class will be totally fine. And you'll go through, you'll get your list, and you'll be able to talk about that list very clearly. And very frankly, dramatically, because one of the goals I have, one of the goals most of us have, is to help break the cycle of violence in our world. And this is where we recognize, oh my gosh, I do this to my children. I've done this to my husband. I do this to people I work with. It's got to stop. It's got to stop now. So you spend time here. You spend time with your chart that has the 2 words, and you point out that every time we pick up that bat, every time we use our power on someone else, we are going to get those feelings and those responses 100% of the time. 100% of the time. They are going to have negative feelings, and they are going to have to cope with me, which means not productive work, not a well-cleaned room for my teenager, not love and understanding with my husband. Coping. And then we move through that, but you want to spend time here. When we look at the teaching arc in a moment, you'll see that time is devoted to these first 11 slides because we're making the point. This is the anchor of this module. And then we go into what is the Rosetta Stone in that who is bugged slide. When somebody else is bugged, I listen. And I encourage you to ask the class on slide 12, what do you do when someone else has a problem? When somebody's bugged, what do you do? Before you show the slide, what do you do every time? And sit with them till somebody yells out, you listen. Yes, we listen. Make that a mantra through this module for you, for the class. What do you do when someone has a problem? You listen. What do we do when I'm the one with the problem? Finally, I get my problems cared for. What do I do? And then we go through our 3 choices. We go through a new definition of confrontation. We remind them facts and feelings, part of listening, right? So I'm going to share my facts and feelings and ask for change. It's just a conversation. Go through contrasting the bat and the bent knee, and then we move into our 5 steps in how to confront others. And we take the time to work through, you've got to be in the right place emotionally, because likely when they're bugging you, you're not. And then we walk through crafting the message with the 3 elements. And we have intentionally placed these exercises under judgment and behavior so folks can get up and do something. We're so tired of sitting and listening. This is such a great day because there's a lot more movement in the class. Teach slide 28. And they may have questions, which I love. We did intentionally have a couple that were a little ambiguous, because guess what? Sometimes it feels ambiguous when we're defining behaviors. We do the self-check, same thing, work with a partner, and then we move into the impact, stress, that different impacts have more value to different behavior styles. So when I'm talking to my DC husband, good, Karen, I'm glad it's helpful. When I'm talking to my DC husband, I talk about outcomes. When I'm talking to my IS son, I'm talking about relationships. I'm not making up the impacts. Don't be confused. The impacts, I just have to work a little harder to think of those D and C outcome impacts. They are able to hear me more clearly. Then we practice the message. We point out that, they can be in any order. There should be one behavior. You'll note in our examples, there are multiple, in some cases, feelings, multiple impacts. One behavior. I can't deal with you confronting me about everything I do that bugs you in one conversation. So I always point out it's one behavior, but you can have lots of feelings and lots of impacts. Just don't make it overwhelming. Then we take the time to practice writing that message. This is really important. Let them do that personal practice in slide 33. If you're pressed for time, save it someplace else, because now I'm getting a chance to try it out before we get into the role plays. You will have folks in class that really struggle with writing the message, and they're going to need your help. So let them take this moment to try it out. Not necessary to debrief this, other than to say, was that hard? What was challenging? And then move on. You're not asking for them to share their problem with another people. Okay. All righty. And now we move on to the next step, sending the message, again, reminding us that we spent a lot of time in nonverbal, because in a confrontation, they're going to hear my tone, and I may have worked on my motive, but my tone may give away that I'm really irritated, right? So very important that we remember I'm the message. And then we talk about, before we get to listening, how people process change, because we're explaining the box, that people go in the box. Yesterday, the whole class was in the box during listening. You could remind them of that as you're teaching through these slides. And recognizing you can pretend they're not going in the box, but guess what? The moment you confront someone, they go in the box. You've given them a problem. You've pointed out change needs to happen. And this is why when people have a problem, I listen. So confrontation encompasses everything that we've learned. And the crazy thing is, when I listen, I need to listen with empathy, remembering all behavior is an expression of a need. So their behavior that's irritating me is a need of theirs, of some sort that I don't understand. So as we work through this, we finish with slide 47 saying, there's a reason they're behaving in this way. You'll never know if you don't listen and listen with empathy. That's the keystone, listening with empathy. And then guess what? They go in the box when I send the message the first time, likely. And when they do, they can't hear everything because they immediately, we do, go to defensiveness. Absolutely, 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 Kara. People feel that you feel the box. You feel like you're, for my husband who's a high D, feel like I'm trying to control him. And I often have to say, I am not trying to control you. I just need you to understand when you do this, I feel this and the impact is that. So that resending is a tool, and frankly, it's a bit of an art when you're confronting someone. It's a fairly heavy one, like our role plays bring. I have to decide, where do I need to send a reflective response, because the person is defensive. They're fighting, they're mad, they're upset. I've thrown them in the box. They are talking, so I'm reflectively responding before I resend the message. Because guess what? While I'm listening and sending that response, they may share their root cause. They may share this terrible thing that's happened in their life. They found out they have cancer. They're going to be out. They don't know what the outcome will be. And that has caused this behavior. And all I've seen is the behavior. So again, a bit of an art and science, and you can share that with your group. This resending is not just a mechanical move. It is, I understand what's happened. However, we need still to get the work done, or we still need to get our child to soccer practice, whatever your issue might be. Personal practice. Then we move straight into our role plays. And in a moment, people are a little concerned about that. But once they realize that you are going to be in contained groups with a confronter, a confrontee, and an observer, we're not going to have you come to the front of the room. You don't have to make it up. We've got them written out for you. People immediately take a deep sigh of relief. Work on framing the role plays, what people are to expect, who's going to do what when, the ones, the twos, the threes. Tell people, write down your number, even though it's a 1, 2, or 3. People forget in the fray, in the chaos of these exercises. So we go through the exercises, and at the end, we debrief. We'll give you more information on that when we're together. And then we move to recognition, right? I'm not going to talk about the debrief right now. We'll talk about that when we're together. But then we move to, now that we've practiced, now that we've learned that empathy and listening and silence are key and no questions. I don't want to be giving confrontation messages 8 times a day, but guess what we can do? We can send recognition messages using the same formula. And we talk about the power of specific feedback to shaping behavior. And then finally, we wrap it up. And again, I always let the class, one person at a time, read the review bullets because they've been listening, I've been talking. Let's all get in this together. And you'll find that the class at this point is very, very involved. They are in a great place. This is a positive place. They're comfortable again. They've succeeded. They've gotten through this, and it's all working well. Okay, Sarah, I'm going to give you the con. And if you'll put me back to the slides, here's our teaching arc. Thank you, Gary. Here's the teaching arc. Gary's been great at letting me know where we are in time. We're doing okay. Again, power of the past, it's really critical because while this way of confronting makes a lot of sense, until I recognize I've got to stop yelling at my family, instead, I need to manage me and control me and make the choice to have the conversation. It just doesn't happen. Again, the pain of staying the same needs to be greater than the pain of change for those of us who are adults to make those changes. So you can see it's really a great day. For me, it's a fun day. You get through the power of the past, the challenge, and then we move pretty straight through, ending in a really good and comfortable place. So you'll note there's a lot of teaching in this section because we're teaching folks a new way. So be okay with that. All righty, next slide, Sarah. Power of the past, power of the past, power of the past. Organize and have your role play handouts ready to go. They used to sometimes sort them incorrectly and I was scrambling just before we did the role plays. Come in early, make sure all of your stuff is ready to go. And if you can have an illustration or a personal story about a confrontation message you sent, that would be terrific. Another thing you can do is write a recognition message to someone in the class who has come a long way perhaps, or who in some way has stretched themselves. So it really kind of primes the pump. There's a lot of animation, especially in the judgment section. Know how that works. Oh, next slide. I'm clicking on myself and nothing's happening. Okay. Don't overteach the formula, but be sure they understand. In the box is huge. It's huge. Don't slow down. Don't speed up there. Okay. Do not. This is worth the price of admission. This idea of the minute I make people aware or I become aware of change, I go in the box. And don't be afraid to use organizational examples. You know, for example, we're moving offices, everybody goes in the box. We're going to use a new software system, everybody goes in the box. We're going to move from PCs to Macs. Oh my God, this whole building would go in the box, and certainly the finance people would. When you're in the box, what do? Give them that idea, remind them in communication cycle. You get in the box with them, your presence and your voice. Listening. So take time with the box, people will love it. Next one is Sarah. Our next slide.
We're there.
Yeah, there it is. And I think I've mentioned all of these. So just remember, we're going to teach you a lot more about setting up exercises when we're together. So be aware, your class has never heard or seen this before. They don't know any of this. Beginner's eyes is important for you when you go into this module. Okay.
Some extra time. I promise we have extra time, Gary. If we want to take a little bit to let's talk about questions, comments. This is such a huge section. There's so many nuances. Jump in.
Yeah,
Hi, this is
anything
Lisa.
to share. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, I have a question. It's not actually on this section, but it's a question that I've been meaning to ask, if that's okay.
Yes.
When we get to St. Louis, from looking at what I was looking at an email we received, is it my understanding that we need to be ready to teach or facilitate the first day we're there?
Yes.
Okay. And so we'll just prepare as best we can for that ahead of time.
Yes. You
Okay.
have a 10-minute, everyone has a 10-minute teach back on Monday, right after lunch. And you are going to be, everyone is going to be teaching a learning objectives slide. So
Okay.
we're going to talk a lot about it in the morning. But as I said the other day, I'm going to emphasize that verb, play that movie trailer. So be thinking about that. You will, have they gotten their assignment, Sarah?
Yes.
Yes, good. So everybody's got their assignment. So you can go in your book, in your big manual, and take a look at those slides. I encourage you to do so. That learning objective slide, we want to get your feet wet on day one and help you understand what a teach back room's about, how it's going to be. I will be in one, Sarah will be in one, many of the folks on the call. So we're there to support and coach you, but it doesn't feel that way right now. I know that. So.
Okay, I had to ask so I knew for sure. I thought we were
Yes.
looking at that email. And can I ask one more question about St. Louis?
You
Is
may.
there a specific dress code for the training, or how should we dress?
No tank tops. Bikinis and Speedos are not acceptable. Flip-flops if you just absolutely must. But yeah, it's comfortable clothes. We do have a dinner on Thursday night that Mr. Chapman, the CEO of Barry Waymiller, is hosting at his club. It's a country club here in St. Louis. So I would encourage you to have business-ish, like nicer jeans, nicer slacks. The guys might want to wear a blazer or just a sweater with a shirt. So other than that, Nina, do you have any input? Before the regular times, it's really just us guys. So jeans and sweaters. It is cold here in March. Not cold, but cool. Sarah will tell
Okay.
you.
Yeah,
Great,
just a
thank
reminder, you may not have been on the call yet when I told everybody earlier, we will be, I'll be sending out an email that has all your final details. It includes all this kind of information, hospitality, gives you a layout of the night center. You'll be fully prepared when you come in on Sunday, that you'll have a really good sense of what's going to be happening that week. And I will have everything you need to pack and bring, but it's comfortably casual for the week. When you're in training, you're going to be sitting a lot, and then there are the two dinners. And as Marcia said, the dinner on Thursday night is at Mr. Chapman's private club. So people tend to, it's a celebration. It's a celebration of what you've accomplished these months and weeks, and especially this coming week. So if you want to dress up, great. If you want to just come business casual, that's fine too. It's not a, it's more of a lax club, one of his clubs, than one of the more upscale, dressy ones. So we want you to be comfortable so that you are comfortable being your best.
Yeah. Ties are
Thank
not
you all for answering that. I appreciate it.
Sure.
And if I may just add, if anyone has specific questions before the email comes, please just email me. I'm happy to answer them. I'm pulling all different bits together, so that's the timing of that email. But just reach out and ask if you have questions that will ease your mind.
Nina does this beautiful thing where like you actually don't even have to think about where you're supposed to go and how you're supposed to get there. Like you're just like, you land and follow the instructions. She has it all planned out for us so safely and so kindly.
This
Nina,
is Jules. I have a question about the
definitely.
content of this particular
Yeah.
paper.
Go ahead, Jules.
So my question is, I think I'm needing a little more support with this chapter. Part of it's the pedagogy, part of it is me kind of stretching into some of the concepts and the terms which are familiar with things that I've taught in the past. So I know there's that learning edge of how do I make sure I'm really clear with this work. So I'd like to spend time exploring that with someone. Who would be the best person for me to reach out to for maybe a phone call to understand some of the terminology and some of the concepts more deeply, even the research behind it?
I'm happy to be available, Jules.
Yeah, either one.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Sure.
You'll have the opportunity too to meet David Vandermolen when we are in St. Louis, and he is the designer and the construct of this material. Having pulled in, like you said, research and all kinds of different resources and just his life experience, and he will welcome a conversation about, wow, help me understand what's happening in your mind when you created this and the flow and why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah. And
Thank
what
you.
yeah. Okay. Other questions? Anything about confrontation itself? About this module? This is a day. Okay. Good.
As
I have a question.
Yeah.
One of the things that stood out to me in going through this again, and one of the things that stood out to me when I had the class was that we talk about, you know, asking for change from somebody else, right? If that's your third option. But we only really kind of talk about the first initial steps of kind of introducing that conversation. And I felt sort of at a loss of like, so what does that mean with the ask? Like, are we literally at some point in time asking like, this is what I need? And I didn't feel like we really dove into that. And sometimes I still find myself struggling with like, is there a literal ask then at some point and we just don't cover that? So could you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think we need to have a literal ask. We're not solving, so I don't get to say, please turn off your radio, I can't work. But I do get to say, I'm really challenged and I need your help. I feel concerned when the radio's playing and I've got a deadline. I can't get it done, and if I don't get it done, we could lose the customer, we could fail in our mission. I really need your help with this. So I think yes, but we don't want to make this a script, because it isn't a script, but it is important to use words like, I need your help. I have a problem. I have a challenge here. Can I share it with you? Can we talk about something that's really bothering me and impacting my work? This is a relationship experience, right? That its intention is to build the relationship and create positive feelings, not create negative relationships and harm others. So it's a great question. I don't think we spend enough time on it. And those of us who've done it forever and ever, it's kind of an of course. And one of the things you can do for your learners is to say to them, as you get into role play, think about how are you going to introduce the topic? How are you going to welcome them into the room? How are you going to start this? Because you need their help. It's not their problem, it's your problem. I have a problem with the radio. The person playing the radio has no problem at all. They're happy as a clam. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
I think it's hard too when like I feel like we know what we want the person to do differently. And I know sometimes when it's not so specific as like turn your radio off. Like I think about the conversations I have with those close to me and how I'm like, wow, I wish we had more conversation right? Like, I know what I want, but if I can't create that connection, that conversation with that person, they're never going to be ready to even consider what they want to do differently in order to meet my need. And so we just kind of like keep in that conversation. And then there comes that point of they're like, okay, well, what do you need from me? And I was like, oh, I'm so glad you asked. Cause like, now I can tell you, this would be super helpful. But I know every time I lead with like what I want, they're not ready to hear that yet.
That's helpful too.
Especially when it's relationship dynamics, that's just, well, that's work.
Yes.
And then there's a truth that this is hard work, and it's not like, oh, I deliver my confrontation message and they go, oh, I'm so sorry, and I'll change tomorrow. And we'd like it to be that way. And then even the opportunity to explore just maybe so you know going forward, ongoing learning and sessions that we can delve deeper into those concepts, because we're never going to touch it all in 3 days.
Yeah, this is just a few hours, really.
This is Jules. With Heather's question, I think one of the things that I've noticed too is sometimes with this, I've found for myself a little bit of the salty bit where I might go into this thinking, oh, this is coming up for me and I want to have this conversation. I have this idea that this person's behavior needs to change. And through the conversation, I realize it's actually my behavior that needs to change. And that's where the reflective listening comes in, that maybe I wasn't clear to begin with, or maybe I had made assumptions. And so that's the pain and beauty of all of this for me, is when I go, oh, okay, so now I'm hearing you reflect that back to me and I'm reflecting what I hear from you, and I realize I could have been more effective. And now I'm in the box trying to find my way. So it's sort of everything we're learning can be applied to ourselves, even though we're really trying to support another person and hearing us.
Yeah. So it's a whole amazing level of self-reflection and a commitment to personal growth. And we're all on that continuum in different locations and abilities to do it. Thank you, Jules. You, speak in my language. All right, Gary tells us we have 2 minutes.